It's time to start previewing the baseball Tigers. Today we start with the infield. It's Locked on LSU. Let's go.
You are Locked on LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free, available wherever you get podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe. And as always, one of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below. Now, inside of a month away from the start of the LSU baseball season. So each week, we'll take a look at a different position group. Today, we'll start with the infield. Next week, we'll take a peek at the outfield. Then we'll look at the pitchers as well, counting you down to LSU against Purdue Fort Wayne on February the 14th, Valentine's Day, as the Tigers will open a new season under Jay Johnson. And there are a host of new players and returning players in new positions that we need to look at. And so for help, called on my buddy Ryan Theriot, former LSU All-SEC infielder, a 3-year starter, a former third-round pick of the Chicago Cubs, played more than a decade of professional baseball, who joins me on my radio show every Friday. And he knows this team and knows ball inside and out. So who better to turn to talk about this? And the most notable change as we talk about the infield today, we'll go infield, outfield, then pitchers over the next several weeks. But as we look at the infield, the most notable change is that Stephen Milam returning and Michael Braswell returning. Now, that was your middle infield. Braswell played short. Milam played second. Of course, Tommy White was over at third base. Well, Tommy White's gone, and Stephen Milam's moving over to the left side of the infield. He told us that on the record earlier this offseason, that Milam was going to be moving to the left side. The question is, would Milam play short or third? Would Braswell stay at short or move to third? And it appears as though Stephen Milam is going to get the crack at shortstop, and Braswell will move to third base. So I asked Ryan about that move with Milam moving over to shortstop and why he might be better suited there. Maybe why he also played second base as a freshman a year ago.
To ask a freshman, a true freshman, to play shortstop in the SEC at a team like LSU is asking a lot. Second base is much easier position to play. So I did the exact same thing. I mean, I played second my freshman year, then moved over to shortstop my sophomore and junior year. So I mean, I can attest it is much easier at second base. So I think that's why you see that move. And then Braswell, I always thought was a corner infielder, corner outfielder type. Third base is going to suit him much better. So I think he just doesn't have that first step quickness explosion. And you don't have to have that to play in the middle, but you got to position yourself properly. I mean, a guy like Cal Ripken Jr., who's one of the greatest shortstops to ever play the game, was not a super quick infielder, but he was always in the right position. Ryan Sandberg, same way. We're talking about like bigger middle infielders. Derek Jeter.
A-Rod till he moved to third.
But they always seemed to be in the right position. I felt like when I was watching the game last year, Braswell was always a step or a half a step too late. And there's ways you can make up for that with elite quickness and first step quickness, or you can position yourself in a manner to where you just always seem to be in the right place at the right time. And that doesn't fall on the coaches. That falls on the player, reading pitches, reading the hitter's hands. As the ball's coming from the pitcher, you're able to move a little bit or shift your weight one way or the other because you're anticipating where that ball is going to go. And he just, look, if he could get to it, he caught it. And he generally did a pretty good job, but at third base, it's going to take some of that pressure off of him.
Okay, so you think defensively they're better if Braswell settles at third and Milam's playing short?
Absolutely do.
Okay,
yeah, I mean, I think you're going to see an improvement from both of those guys.
So that's fantastic to see. If you see an improvement from both, that makes the left side of your infield better. Now, remember, Stephen Milam last year exploded. He was a first-team freshman All-American. He had 326 on the season. Braswell had a really strong finish to the season on the all-regional team and then also on the SEC all-tournament team as well. Of course, Braswell started his career for 2 years at South Carolina before coming to LSU. There was some question as to whether or not he would return, but he hit 311 a season ago for the Tigers. His best season in college, certainly, after hitting 284 and then 255 in his 2 seasons at South Carolina. But now Braswell is back for a 4th season. Looks like he'll move to third base, or at least that's where he projects to start the season, with Milam moving to short. So on the right side, you have a vacancy with Milam moving over to the left. And the guy who's likely to step in there is Utah Valley transfer Danny Dickinson.
I think a guy that can really swing the bat. The Dickinson kid was at Utah Valley. Utah Valley. I know they're really high on him. Had a good offensive fall. He'll slide into second base. Again, like I said before, it's one of the second base is one of those positions that you can relax a little bit defensively. My opinion, it's easiest position in the infield. It's shortest throw, obviously, and so it'll allow him to focus a little bit more offensively, which is a big jump. And we're asking a kid to come from the conference that he was in before to the SEC, which is the best conference in the country, and swing the bat. So that's the right spot for him.
But keep in mind, when we talk about Danny Dickinson, yes, he's coming in from Utah Valley, but he has a .369 career batting average of 27 homers. He was the number 2 transfer in the country from Baseball America's top 100 college transfers. So this is a guy that is a projected round 1 guy in next summer's draft. This is a guy that LSU is expecting to be a guy that hits in the top third of its lineup and be an everyday player and a real impact guy that's going to provide some of that protection in the lineup for Bear Jones, with Tommy White now off to pro ball. Speaking of Bear Jones, of course, Theriot had good things to say about LSU's returning first baseman.
You've got a guy coming back that's probably the best in his position in the country. So defensively, I thought Jones did a hell of a job last year. Look, we just got done watching the greatest defensive first baseman in LSU history play over there in Trey Morgan, and I didn't see a huge drop-off. I mean, sure, he didn't do the flashy picks that Trey was able to do and the footwork around the bag, but he did exactly what he was supposed to do, and he was in the right place, the right time, and caught every ball. So I thought he did a hell of a job there at first.
The surprise with Jones is just that he's back for another season. Remember, Jared Jones is a draft-eligible sophomore, and after clubbing 28 homers and hitting .301 a season ago, the thought was that he was going to go pro. And I know there's this idea that, well, you come back and you improve your stock and all that stuff, but the truth is Bear Jones has a lower ceiling because we know what he is defensively. He is a defensive, power-hitting first baseman. So it's not as if Jones coming back can prove he's got better power or can play a different position that makes him more versatile. He's a guy at the next level that's going to stand on first base and club homers. So there is a role for guys like that at the next level, but you're also not necessarily guys that are going to go in the top half of round 1. So this might be one of those instances where still having his leverage, but also NIL really benefit LSU in getting Jared Jones to be able to return for a second season in Baton Rouge. The real question is, no Tommy White. Do you have that protection in the lineup for Bear Jones, or do teams just pitch around him? That's something we'll continue to wait and see. I also asked Theriot about a potential sleeper on the infield. Look, Milam a year ago was a guy that at this point we weren't thinking was going to be an everyday player, but he ended up being a freshman All-American. So what are a couple of names maybe worth keeping an eye on right now heading into the season that could emerge?
Tanner Reeves, who's a defensive first type player, can play any position in the infield. If someone gets hurt, you can fill him in. He can handle the bat. One of those guys that's just extremely versatile, very similar to Milam in that regard, where you could throw him to second, short, or third, and he would be okay. And then the young kid from New Orleans, Mikey Ryan, who we've talked about quite a bit, who I trained, shout out, who's a freshman, true freshman, probably needs a little more time, but I expect Michael Ryan to be a superstar and a major contributor on this team, and I wouldn't be shocked to see him by the end of the year being an everyday player.
So for what it's worth, Tanner Reeves, who Theriot mentioned there, is transferring in from Blinn College, helped Blinn win their first JUCO national championship ever. And he hit a cumulative .398. Tanner Reeves did .398 in 2 years at Blinn. So it's one of those things where if you're struggling to find offense at times this year and you've got to find a way to get Reeves or a bat in the lineup, Reeves could DH. He could play in the outfield if you need to. Certainly he's an infielder. He could play anywhere in the infield. But when you're talking about a a versatile glove, you find a spot, almost like you did last year with Ashton Larson, where you had to find a way to get Larson. I mean, every time he got in that bat, he got on base. So he ended up settling in right field. Wasn't your best defensive right fielder, but he's a guy you had to have in the lineup. So maybe something worth keeping an eye on there with Tanner Reeves as well. And then Mikey Ryan's interesting. He's from Rummel in New Orleans, and he was the best shortstop in Louisiana, the number 113 overall high school player in the country by perfect game. A guy who was thought to be a potential draft risk, but one of those kids from Louisiana, kind of like Theriot, who ached and longed and dreamed about playing for the Tigers and wearing the purple and gold. And I think LSU will be better for having Mikey Ryan on the roster. Then there's the backstop. So you're losing Milazzo. You're losing Travinsky. You had to go add bodies there, and you did. Cade Arambidi is an all-everything freshman coming in, and Blaze Priester, who is from the Baton Rouge area at Live Oak, went the JUCO route, now is at LSU. Those are the two guys vying for the job.
Look, I think Arambidi is going to be the guy. He's a guy that we didn't expect to be here. Kind of the five-star type. If you're talking in football talk, plug and play guy that can come in there and give you immediate innings and make an immediate impact. I'm excited to see him. I fully expect him to be the catcher and the one leading this pitching staff.
Okay. What about Blaze Priester?
So Priester, Baton Rouge kid, Live Oak, I think it was.
Yep.
Priester had a hell of a fall, man. Weird way of getting here. Kind of took some different turns. Junior college route, but highly recruited out of high school. Thought was going to be an early draft pick, and big time power. Whether it's DH, whether it's catching, whether it's filling in at first base, he's going to contribute somewhere. Big time arm as well, but just from a polished catching standpoint, I would expect the other kid to get more innings. But Priester's going to contribute, and a hell of a player in his own right.
So it kind of comes to the question, similar to what we asked with Milazzo and Travinsky. Do you want the defense or do you want the offense? Of course, with Milazzo, the offense started to come around later. Travinsky had the big home run power. And I asked Theriot that. Would you rather the defense with Arambidi or the offense with Priester?
I think early on in the season when it's freezing cold outside and runs are a premium, I think you got to have the defender back there that's going to keep everything tight, keep the pitchers locked in. And listen, we're going to know a lot after the first month of the season on how these arms respond to certain guys behind the plate. Jay's going to give them both opportunities, I'm sure, and see what happens. But as the weather warms up and we're looking at higher scoring games, you want to get the bat in there, and you want to win games, 11-7, and rather than 2-0 or 1-0. So early on, I would say defense is a premium.
I think I'd rather 11-0.
Yeah.
Translation, expect to see both guys throughout the course of this season. Quick overview there of LSU's infield as they head into the 2025 baseball season. Next week, we'll look at the outfield, and we'll look at the pitchers as well. But the basketball Tigers are back on the floor on Saturday. We'll give you a quick preview of LSU at Texas A&M. Locked on LSU, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. If you're attending an NFL playoff game, my goodness, that can be an experience like no other. The energy, the excitement, the connection with the other fans, it's unmatched. Remember the thrill of seeing the New Orleans Saints win throughout that 2009 playoff run all the way to the Super Bowl, being able to be in the Dome for 2011 in the divisional round against the wild card round against Detroit before going and losing, unfortunately, the divisional round at San Francisco. So, yes, it's incredible to be there for the NFL playoffs. And this year, Game Time makes it even easier to create those unforgettable moments with their new feature, Game Time Picks. It filters out the fluff. It shows you only the best deals on great seats so you can focus on what matters, being there. I've used Game Time Picks to grab tickets for upcoming playoff games and upcoming events, and you should do the very same thing as well. Game Time couldn't be easier. You could find the super deal that gives you incredible value for an amazing seats. You could even preview the seats from the app before you buy. I love the all-in pricing feature. It's a game changer, so there's no surprise fees at checkout. Plus, Knowing your tickets are backed by the Game Time guarantee gives you complete peace of mind. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem with the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. LSU's basketball Tigers are back on the floor, and they're on the road at Reed Arena against Texas A&M on Saturday. And this after LSU got a home win against Arkansas, the Tigers are 1-3 in conference, and they're right now in the midst of this four road games in 4 out of 5 road games in that stretch, where, of course, they've already lost the first couple of road games on this stretch before coming home to beat Arkansas. Now back-to-back road games against Texas A&M and Alabama before they're home against number 1 Auburn. If there were a gettable game in this stretch of the next 3, it would feel like this one. Coleman Coliseum in Tuscaloosa has been a house of horrors for LSU historically, but we'll get there. And then Auburn is playing. I mean, they are the best team in the country right now, and I don't care if that game was played on the moon. It's hard to imagine LSU winning that even at the Maravich Center. So you got the game against Arkansas. You're going to have to steal one that maybe you don't feel like you can, but getting that game against Arkansas was big, and now you have this brutal 3-game stretch. We're going to keep an eye on the availability of Texas A&M point guard Wade Taylor IV. He missed the last 3 games because of what was described as knee tightness, and this is just absolutely critical. Wade Taylor is a 2-time first-team All-SEC player. He is a record-setting player for Texas A&M. He holds their record for 3-pointers made and points by a junior last season, and he can get his shot anywhere. So Wade Taylor is going to be really critical to see if he plays in this ball game. Another key factor in this game will be to watch the charity stripe. LSU is 76% from the free throw line. That's second best in the league. Only Oklahoma is better. And in their win against Arkansas, LSU was awesome. They made 26 of their 28 shots from the foul line in what ended up being a 4-point game. So that's something that LSU's got to capitalize on. You got to get to the line and you got to make them. But Texas A&M is similar. The Aggies are not great in the field goal shot stat, but they're 17th in the country in opponents' fouls per game and 21st in the country in percentage of their points from the foul line. So basically, LSU was awesome at the free throw line against Arkansas. A&M relies on getting to the free throw line. So if you're looking at the box score, we always talk about the turnover stat and how LSU's got to protect the basketball. But look at the free throw stat after this game. That should tell you a lot. And, I mean, it just goes without saying, you got to have a big game from Cam Carter. He's awesome. He scored 27 against Arkansas. He's your best player. If Cam Carter's going, the LSU offense goes. If Cam Carter isn't, unfortunately, this LSU offense isn't, or they'll have to have something unexpected. So, look, the loss to Pittsburgh, LSU, Cam Carter scored 11 and LSU scored 63 and lost that basketball game. So they got to get Cam Carter going. So it's the Tigers and the Aggies from Reed Arena. We'll see if LSU can make it 2 in a row in conference play and start to climb their way a bit out of the cellar. For whatever it is worth, and I don't know if you look transitively year to year, if that matters at all, but Matt McMahon and the Tigers, of course, for what it's worth, LSU is an 11.5-point road dog in this game. So they're a prohibitive underdog, and you would expect that. But a year ago, LSU played Texas A&M. They lost a home game to Texas A&M 73-69, but they won at Reed Arena. LSU won at Reed Arena 68-53. It was the SEC opener, as a matter of fact, and LSU won that game by 15, and it was a walk. It was like a rocking chair, no sweat type game. So Matt McMahon's Tigers won at Reed Arena a year ago. You don't have any of those players. I mean, you don't have Will Baker, Jordan Wright, or any of those guys, but we'll see if the Tigers, Matt McMahon against Buzz Williams, could go the Tigers' way here on Saturday. Hey, that'll do it for us today's episode of Locked On LSU. Thanks so much for making this your first listen. Please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Rate us, leave a review. If you're on YouTube, smash that like button, hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video. And let a friend know that if they love the Tigers, we got you here every single day for Locked On LSU, your team every day.